Justin Thomas is one of the greatest players in the game right now. However, he has struggled in the 2023 season with his form and with his swing. So we're going to do an in-depth analysis on Justin Thomas' swing, what he does really well, and what causes some issues for Justin. We're going to go over that and have a look today. So let's have a look firstly at setup. So as most PGA Tour players, very neutral setup, neutral grip, not a whole lot wrong here. Now I think where Justin does come into some issues is the takeaway. So I want us to specifically watch the face-on view. So watch his head. Now he gets a little bit of tilt there. I don't mind that. Nicholas did it. I think Hogan did it. Tiger did it. Just helping him rotate his cervical spine. And it just helps aid rotation in the backswing. Not got an issue with that. However, watch what happens. His head's going to move down and away from the target. Can you see that move? Down and away. So where I think this causes issues is later on in Justin's swing, because he does get his hands very high and has to reroute the club in order to shallow it. He doesn't like that position at the top, but I think a lot of it comes from this takeaway position. So if we look at it from down the line, you'll see how that head's moving down. Don't mind it rotating, but it moves down, which puts his hands behind him. He gets a little bit steeper in the shoulder plane, and then what that'll do is get him picking up his hands, and he gets his hands very, very high at the top of his swing. Now, I personally like that position. However, he has to reroute it, which then causes some issues in his swing. So you'll see, if I just clear those lines, he'll then start to move that handle up, and he gets the club quite upright for a lot of guys. You see, it's very common for guys to be more sort of here with that shaft plane. Don't mind it at all, but you'll see as he works up to the top of his swing how high his hands actually do get compared to most guys on tour. You'll see from similar position from face on, not a whole lot of wrist set. Look at how much width he's got. I love that. That right elbow's higher than his left. Again, that will help with getting those high hands, which is great for speed, but again will show some issues that it can create for Justin. So bring it up a couple more frames. You'll see how he moves nicely into that trail side, and then top of the backswing. Lovely high hands here. Very, very wide, very, very powerful. However, Justin doesn't like this position, and I will show you why. So his hands get quite high here, but watch what he has to do now to shallow the club. Because his hands are so high, I mean, look at the butt position of that club. Like most guys like Rory or like Max Homer, their hand position at the top would be more over here, sort of behind that left heel. So if Justin were to bring the hands sort of down on the same plane that he started on, he'd get very, very steep. So he has to create a move to avoid that steepness. And what Justin does is he drives the right knee and right hip forward, which as a sort of counterbalance will then drop the club out behind him. So watch this move in transition. There. So can you see how the right knee, right hip drive forward, and then it drops that club into a lovely shallow position. Now I love that move as a matchup. He's probably a little bit steeper than some guys would sort of suggest that's trendy right now. But I mean, as a matchup, it's a great move, but it can also create some issues coming into impact. So we'll look from face on. You'll see how that right hip starts to drive forward, right knee starts to drive forward. See that? I mean, he does a great job of really rotating, maintaining that lag. I mean, I'm being very, very critical, but for his ability, not winning on tour in 2023 was a little bit of a disaster for him. So you'll see as he keeps coming down, look how that knee's still driving, that hip's driving forward. And we've got to remember here, it's a very, very powerful action, very powerful. But when he comes into impact, you'll see how little room he actually has, which then can cause some issues with strike. So let's bring him into impact. And you can see there how close those hands are to the body and how he has to early extend a little bit. Now, early extension has gotten a bad rep. A lot of guys do early extend, Nicholas being one of the most famous early extenders. It can be a very powerful move, but when you lose that amount of space, you then can present the hosel to the ball. I've seen Justin hit a few shanks in PGA Tour events. Famously, he hit a shank on his way to winning the PGA Championship. So it's a little bit of a contentious issue, shall we say, in golf, early extension. Do I think it causes an issue for Justin? Probably. And I think that's probably due to the way he moves, that initial portion in backswing of that head moving down and those shoulders getting steep, making the club work more up and getting those hands high. The problem is if we change it so those hands go a little bit deeper, he would then have to change the way he transitions in order to match up correctly. So he's doing the correct matchup. So it's more of a case for him at his level. We're not going to really see changes in that motion because it's so ingrained. So he's kind of just got to manage it and manage that he doesn't get too high with those hands and move too aggressively with that knee out towards the ball. Now, the other thing with Justin's move that you'll see with guys that have that move is you'll also see a big drive down into the ground and then pushing off. Now, if you've seen any of the ground force data with Justin, what happens is as he approaches impact, let me clear those lines, I want you to look at that left foot, how it'll jump off the ground. Can you see that? It jumps off the ground, so his centre of pressure will move back towards that right foot. Now, it's a very powerful way of swinging. You'll see a lot of long drive guys do it, and I would suggest that Justin does that because he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's probably 5'10", 5'11", and he's also quite light. So if he maybe put on a little bit of weight, a bit of muscle, I think he could sort of negate that action a little bit better and maintain that space a little bit more. You saw Tiger do that in the early 2000s, put on a bit of muscle, put on a bit of size, and he was able to be a little stronger through the ball and have less of a pronounced jump. So that could be a route that Justin does go down. And you've got to remember as well, this guy's won 2 major championships with this action. So I think it's more of a case of just managing the action. And when it gets a little bit too drastic, those hands get a little bit too high and that hip drive gets a little bit too much and that knee drive gets a little bit too much, then I think that's where his issues are going to come from. Now, it's still a fantastic swing. He's still, top 30 in the world, and I'm sure he will get back to being world number 1 or definitely top 5 in the world. He just needs to manage that aspect of his game, and ultimately, if you look at his Instagram, he's been practicing hard and working on that. You'll see Justin work a lot on this motion where he'll have a shaft on this sort of position, which will just, what that enables him to do is make sure that when he does get a little bit more drive through the knee, his bad habit will be that his club drops too inside just because he's not got the space there. So by putting that alignment stick or shaft out here, he's able to keep the club more outside his hand so he can get on top of it and get that hit back and avoid early extending as much. So it's not a case of changing his swing drastically, because when you're dealing with a guy that is a multi-million pound dollar winner on the PGA Tour, trying to change something so drastic that's so ingrained can cause a lot of issues. That's why you see guys that have won majors or won multiple tournaments change the swing and then they lose the game completely and you never hear of them again. So it's not a case of changing it, it's a case of managing it. Now, I love Justin's swing and I am confident that with his coach Mike Thomas, who's also his dad, that he'll get back in track and get back into winning ways in 2024.